Alright, hello everyone, Shorts Fiat here, and I'd like to begin this video by stating that this is not going to be one of my scripted videos as much as I would like it to be. The reason for that is quite simple, and basically when I go to do scripted videos, it's a several month process as I generally try to rehearse and all that stuff and edit and write a script for about 4 or 5 months prior to releasing the video, and well, this is something that I'd like to share my opinion on now, and just waiting 4 or 5 months may not be a very good idea. But I'll try to do the best that I can, but you'll have to forgive me, because I'm honestly not very good at unscripted videos, which is why I don't monetize, but I digress. Today I'm here to talk about the whole incident with the Graf Zeppelin that recently happened with Wargaming's game World of Warships. Alright, now for those of you that have never seen my videos before, basically the long and short of it is, I don't tend to focus Wargaming's games in particular, but when I do, I tend to focus on carrier gameplay, as I really love carriers, and not just in World of Warships, but in the earlier Wargaming titles, I was commanding terror carriers and bombing the crap out of the Free Nations Union like it was nobody's business. Though I don't expect many of you to remember Wargaming's original games, but it was a series, or trilogy rather, called Massive Assault. And yeah, I was hardcore Phantom League player and really loved the Terra carriers. But in other games I play as well, I'm really into carriers. However, it's not just carriers that I'm obsessed with, but German stuff as well. Now in real life, I am an American, but at the age of 16 I started to learn the German language, and here we are over a decade later, or 12 years later technically, and I've pretty much mastered the entire language and have pretty much had it mastered for the past 5 or so years. And I'm a huge fan of history, so essentially when it comes to this game, my goal is to not only get every carrier, and premium and non-premium as well, but to also get every German ship. And it was on that pretense alone that I bought the Graf Zeppelin, simply because, again, it was a carrier and it was a German ship. And I say this because there are many people that would assume that I'm just trying to buy the flavor of the month ship and stuff. I get accused of that for a very long time, but if we take a look at the tech tree here, you can kind of see that I've made a bit of progress on the German tech tree. And when we take a look at the US ships, you can see I own all the carriers up to the Essex, as well as the Saipan, and then on the IJN side, I've got the carriers up to the Hiryu, as well as the Kaga. I mean, if you just set the filter here to show only CVs, yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that I'm a collector of the CVs. And if you set it to just German, yeah, where are you, Germany? Yeah. I mean, I even hold on to the low tier stuff simply because, well, I want to own every German ship and every CV in the game. So what I'm basically saying is that's why I bought the Graf Zeppelin, and I didn't really pay any attention to the videos that were produced on it. I had heard stories that it was 3 torpedo launchers and all that, and then I bought it and saw that it was all dive bombers, but I really didn't care because, again, it was a German carrier. Additionally, one other huge selling point for me was Thea Kreutzer, who was the HSF captain. And for those of you that didn't buy the HSF or High School Fleet ships, you may not be aware of this, but the voice actor who played her did a phenomenal job for the role of carriers. And before I bought the Graf Zeppelin, I was using her as the voice for my other carriers, and it is just absolutely amazing and wonderful in every way. And it was just kind of annoying to have to keep going in the menu and changing voice packs every time I changed carriers. So obviously having her on her own ship, well, that was just even more awesome. But in short, basically I bought it not because of a statistical or anything like that, but again, just because I like German ships, I like carriers, and, well, I wanted her, Thea, to be on a CV. But enough of that, let's get into the controversy. Now, by now, most of you have probably heard of the controversy. You know, it's been said that the ship was released way too early and all that other stuff, and yada yada yada. And many people are claiming that it sucks. And statistically, yes it does. I'm not going to deny that right now. Now, I'm not really releasing this as a buyer's guide to encourage people not to buy it or anything like that, as Wargaming has already responded to the controversy by removing it from sale. However, they did mention that people like me who wish to hang on to the ship, they value their feedback, and feedback is exactly what I'm going to give. But again, before I start talking stats, I just want to again reiterate that I basically just bought this as a collector's item and just to have fun with the anime captain. And I'm not really going to comment on the price because, well, there's no really nice way to say this without people getting really offended, but as I said in one of my YouTube comments, I've heard that all before. Basically, in real life, I am an IPO or industrial press operator, or as well as a CNC, and I'm not going to go into the details of what all that is, but the short version is I operate really big machines in a manufacturing factory for a major corporation. I'm not going to say which one, as I am under an NDA from said corporation. And if you think video game company NDAs are bad, well, you ought to see a real-life corporation's NDA. But anyways, I digress. Point is, I make a good amount of money, and many people have commented on the $60 price as being too much, and honestly, for me, it's not. I think I've spent $500 on this game in the past couple months alone, so $60 really isn't that much. And for me, it's just a fun toy to use in PvE with the anime voices and all that. But for the average player, I would definitely not have recommended that you bought this, and the fact that they're offering refunds is really good because, well, honestly, right now I see this as nothing more than a collector's item or a toy for people with essentially more money than brains. So, that being said, I have truly enjoyed it because, well, with the high pay for my job comes long hours. Essentially, I'm working about 11 hours a day, and there's 2 hours a day commute time. So essentially 13 hours a day I'm gone, and when I come home, it was just really fun to play with the German carrier, with the anime voices, and just bomb stuff as per usual. But again, like I say, I view it as nothing more than just a toy, and in fact, I have not yet brought this thing into PvP because, well, with PvP, I kind of want to win. And I feel that the team that's going to have me as a carrier is owed that, and if I'm going to enter into the game, I feel that I should enter into the best ship possible for the situation, and I'm far more experienced with U.S. carriers when it comes to Tier 8. I mean, in my very first PvE battle with this thing, my first thought was my Lexington could wreck this ship. And even though I haven't got the Lexington captain up very high, assuming she loads, when you take a look at the Lexington, you can see that I've at least played it long enough to get everything unlocked, as well as the Essex. And the captain's not very high simply because I moved it up. But anyone who has any doubt that I've been spending a lot of times playing as carriers needs only to look at my Ranger captain. The Ranger itself has 890,000 experience available on it, whereas the captain is level 19 and has been earning me some elite commander's experience. So like I say, if I'm going to enter into PvP, I'm definitely going to play as a US carrier, because even my independence is up to 17 points. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, it's not a very good carrier. I enjoy it as a simple, harmless toy in PvE, but yeah, it needs some major work done before it's even effective in PvP, or before I would even take it to PvP. And so that's what I want to comment on now. And so let's begin by looking at the modules. One of the main issues here is that its setup cannot be changed, and that setup consists of 2 squadrons of fighters and 3 squadrons of dive bombers. Now you can switch the dive bombers between AP and HE bombers. However, this doesn't just change the armament they use, but the attack pattern. Now with HE, what I noticed is it's a simple circle as opposed to the oval that dive bombers typically dive bomb in. And while the circle size is reduced with manual aiming, it's not by much. And the main problem that I can see with this is it allows you to basically attack from any angle, and there's no player skill involved increasing your chances of doing damage to the enemy, and as a direct result you are at pretty much the mercy of the random number generator. And therein lies one of the first problems I have with it, because with all other carriers you have an oval dive bomber attack crosshair, whatever you want to call it, and this allows the player to be rewarded for skill, such as intentionally moving the dive bombers either in front of the enemy ship or behind the enemy ship, and then trying to line it up perfectly so that the oval bombing area is right in line with the entire length of the enemy ships. And then if you do it even better, you can then manual aim it, which reduces that circle or that oval size, which could potentially allow you to get all bombs to hit a ship. And I have actually pulled that off. I still remember when one of my American squads got an entire 7 hits, dive bomber hits from a single squad attack on an enemy Bismarck, I believe. At least I think it was a Bismarck. I don't know. But the point is that would not have happened without the oval or manual aim. But with this dive bomb area just being a straight up circle, then there really is no player skill involved, because you could attack from the side or front or any direction and your chances of hitting are still going to pretty much be the same. And again, that's my first problem with it. You know, I know you guys want to try to make things different, but if you're going to give me a carrier, especially a carrier that's above tier 6, aka it can do a manual attack, we really need to be able to have player skill play a factor in it. And as of right now, this just basically takes no skill. And that's a problem on a couple different levels, because on the one hand, it doesn't mean there's any ability for the enemies who are about to be bombed to have any chance of dodging the bombs and things like that. And traditionally, when it comes to dive bombers, the rule of thumb was, well, if you see dive bombers coming, turn your broadside to them, because then they'll either have to attack you with their broadside where most of the oval is not on your ship, or they'll have to realign their ship, and this could potentially put their bombers in danger of losing a couple beforehand. Now I found that I could just throw my bombers at the ships at any direction and it doesn't matter, which seems like a good idea in theory, but as much as I've played carriers, and especially at the higher tiers, I want to have some element of player skill, and as of right now the HE bombs don't provide that. Now, I'm going to jump into a co-op match and kind of explain to you all what exactly I'm talking about and why the HE bomber setup with that circle as opposed to an oval just isn't a good idea. Now, additionally, while we're here in an actual game, we can discuss one of the other problems that the ship has, and that is the abysmal state of its fighters. And it's not so much the number of fighters that concerns me, but it's the ammo of, or the amount of ammo that's available to the fighters. And therein lies the problem. There's just not much ammo at all. Now, I have the upgrade on here that increases the ammo by 50%, as well as the dogfighting expert skill that increases it by another 10%, and still these things run out of ammo like crazy. And therein lies the problem. And one suggestion that I'd like to make is, I think that if you're going to try to make each nation's ships and all that have their own gimmick or quirk, whatever you want to call it, then it at least needs to line up with that nation's actual abilities. And one of the things that's well documented with the German fighters is well, basically, as I was told when I played World of Warplanes and then subsequently War Thunder, that if I'm going to play as a German ship, I need to learn how to boom and zoom, where you go up to a really high altitude and then just fly straight down, do massive damage, and don't even think about dogfighting. Because every time I would try to dogfight with a German fighter in, say, warplanes, and I'd end up against a Japanese fighter, yeah, I would be outmaneuvered every time. And as such, I think that that kind of aspect of German planes needs to be reflected in this game, let's see, how do I want to say this? Basically, I think the Germans should be able to excel at strafing. I know a lot of people may have a huge problem with that, but I'm not saying they need to be given any additional damage, but since strafing is pretty much the only way for the German bombers or fighters to get kills, they kind of need to have extra ammo to do so, I feel. And maybe significantly more ammo per plane, I think would be a good gimmick or quirk, if you want to add one, for this game to have. Alright. Alright. But there we are, already out of ammo. Boo. Well, let's see if we can... Alright, break in there. Yep, see, already out of ammo, and I've only killed 15 planes, and that was within 2 squads. And now that I'm out of ammo, my fighters are going to get destroyed. Like I say, the lack of ammo is the biggest problem I have with this game, or this carrier's fighters. It's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, only killing 15 planes with 8 fighters. Oh my goodness. Alright, but we can see the issue with the dive bombers. You can see it just puts a circle on it, and the manual aim circle is not much better. As you can see, there's no more need to tactically realign to the position of the enemies and the direction they're going. You can just attack from the sides and all that. And again, that sounds like it would make the game better because, oh, it's much easier. But as a Tier 8 carrier, I don't want a carrier that's basically, to put it simply, based around noob-friendly tactics. You know, at this tier, you should really know what you're doing with the carrier and all that, and have mastery of manual aim and strafing. And again, that's where this carrier is very, very weak. There's just no room, it seems, with this ship for experienced tactics like I like to employ. I mean, these include strafing and manual aiming, and how much of that can you really do? Because the ammo severely limits strafing, and the fighters tend to suck in dogfighting. And with the HE bombs not being able to really increase your chances of hitting by manual aim, it just, it seems kind of annoying. But see, tactics like that are stuff that I like to do on a regular basis, but you can already see how much of a disaster it ended in. I lost a couple planes, and they're rapidly running out of ammo, and this is only really their second engagement. Whereas when I pull that kind of maneuver off with 2 squads of American fighters, it is just absolutely devastating. So that's definitely one of my suggestions right there. Give German planes significantly more ammo, or at the very least increase the damage of strafing or something, because again, according to history, strafing was, and that kind of tactics was what made the German planes great. You know, they weren't expert dogfighters and stuff like that. You know, I would even suggest, if it was possible, and could be done without too much of a hassle with regards to programming, have it so German fighters theoretically maybe do less damage in dogfights, but their strafing damage is increased as a result. Or maybe they consume less ammo in strafing than other ones, I don't know. But the lack of ammo definitely is a problem, and they have nothing to make up for it with. You know, it'd be fine if they had a detriment, but also had a good thing to make up for it, but the German fighters just simply do not. Now, big strength though, or one thing that I do like about this ship that I gotta mention, is the secondaries, and it's one of the reasons why I have had no problem at all charging directly into close quarters combat, and in one match I got over 100 secondary hits. Now that is one strength of the carrier that I do kind of love. However, the fact that the only strength I can think of with this carrier is its secondaries, well, that's kind of like the Akazuki, I believe it is, AA. You know, the strength of that ship is its insane AA. I mean, I personally can't stand it when I have to keep one of those things spotted. Oh my goodness, their AA is insane. But, as I was telling one of my friends, or as we were talking, I basically said, so the one thing that this destroyer is good at is the one thing a destroyer shouldn't be doing, and that is, of course, AA. And in the same way, you have that similar situation here with the Graf Zepplin. The one thing it's really good at, secondaries, is the one thing that it should not be doing. I mean, so here we are, it's over 5.5 kilometers away, and the secondaries are already unloading on it. Alright. Now let's pull it back. Now personally I am fine with a secondary, a carrier with strong secondaries, because it's going to make it really fun to deal with DDs, and there are several legitimate close-range carrier tactics that I've seen employed on the battlefield that have worked wonders and been really effective. I mean, there's one guy I know who likes to use his Rujo in close quarters combat, which is kind of funny when he gets kills, but anyways, I digress. Point is, to recap what I've said so far, the fighters are extremely weak and they have absolutely no advantages to speak of. And they're even weaker, I would say, than IJN, because I can use IJN fighters, and at the very least the IJN has the choice of bringing in additional fighters if needed. Whereas these, well, they can't really do that because, again, it's one loadout. And while you could argue that the Enterprise, the Tier 8 American Premium, also only has one loadout, the simple fact is its fighters are far more capable, in my opinion, than those of the Zepplin. And not only that, but I think it starts with 5 fighters a squad by default, whereas this one does not. Alright, but as we go in here, let's try a manual aim. Yeah, see, manual aiming just really doesn't help at all, because especially with long ships like carriers, it just... And already we killed a couple planes, and look again how low that ammo is. Yeah. Don't know why I'm not moving, but yeah. Okay, and before I attack this squad of 5 dive bombers, one of these squads was at half health, or not half health, half ammo, and the other was a little bit below. 8 planes, one squad at half ammo, and one a little bit below that, did not have enough ammo to kill a squad of 5 dive bombers. I shudder to think how bad this would be without the ammo upgrade or the dogfighter skill. Yeah, so again, I know I've said it before, but I'll keep saying it. The low ammo of these things is completely ridiculous. These fighters are the weakest I've ever seen. I could see even a Hiryu, or more than that, maybe a Rujo even, wrecking this thing in terms of fighter combat. I mean, the Rujo could even put out more fighters. I mean, this carrier at best could have 10 fighters, whereas the Rujo can at least have 15 at max. And so that allows a lot more strafing possibilities and all that other good stuff. And again though, this dive bomber or HE circle just, it doesn't work, because it's one thing to have this kind of thing on a lower tier carrier. You know, I could actually see that and say like a tier 4 or 5, you know, to give new players a little bit of a feel for it and not have to worry so much about setting up the perfect angle. But then again, my main issue with it, like I've said before, is it's basically a very low skill ceiling with this kind of setup. I mean, there's not really much I can do when it comes to manual aiming. It's like, where do I want to put the circle? And the circle's size isn't decreased by that much. But yeah. And as you can see here by looking at the end of the battle statistics, we have damage calls with aircraft, 16 bombs hit for a total of 42,000 damage, but the total number of bombs fired was 53. So that's a bit less than half of the bombs fired actually hit their target. And while people could argue that that may be on par with what happens usually with other bombers as well, I don't really know. I've never really looked at it as a result of some other battles with the US or the IJN carriers, but what I do know is the misses and stuff there wouldn't annoy me as much as it does here, because with the other carriers and it being an oval and manual aiming actually having a very useful effect, I feel like if I missed something, it was kind of my fault and I could put the blame on myself. Whereas here I feel like I'm at the mercy of RNG. Yeah, that's just not a good feeling. Alright, I mean, and for those of you that don't usually play carriers and don't understand just quite how bad it is when it comes to the ammo reserve and just how low it is, I'd like to put a couple things into perspective for you. Now, when you look at the fighters here, you can hover over them and you can see their statistics. And where it says loadout, that's essentially how much ammo that you have. Now, if you'll notice that it says here that it has 67 loadout, so, 67 rounds of ammunition. Now, I have the upgrade that adds plus 50% to fighter ammunition, so it would be around 50, give or take, somewhere in that area, by default. Now, furthermore, like I said, I have the dogfighting expert skill with Thea that adds 10% more ammunition. So, now 67 may sound like a lot of ammunition, but I want to show you something that just may surprise you and give you an idea of exactly how bad it is. Okay, so we see that that has 67 ammunition, right? Let's go to the Tier 4 American carrier, the Langley. How much ammunition do you think that their fighter squadron has? Well, let's look. 173. One squad of American fighters at Tier 4 quite literally has more than double the ammunition of both German Tier 8 squads combined. You can't see it, but I'm quite literally facepalming at this very notion. Now you may say, well, maybe that's just one carrier that has more than the Graf Zepplin. Let's take a look at our host show. A loadout of 78. 78 compared to the 67 of the German. Now you may say, well, that's not that much of a difference. This is a Tier 4 Japanese carrier, and we're comparing it to a Tier 8 German premium carrier. Take a look at the Zuio. Zuio, 90 rounds of ammunition. The Ryujo, 99. Hiryu's a little low at 76, but that's still higher than that. Not only that, the Hiryu has the option of bringing an additional squad of fighters if needed. We take a look at the Kaga. Now, it's 90, but that's without a cap. Well, granted, it does have the upgrade anyways, but that could be increased by 10% if I added a captain with the right skills. We take a look at the Bogue. 182. The Independence. 143. The Ranger, 119. Saipan, 81. Move on to the Lexington. Lexington, 101. Enterprise, 108. And then finally we have the Essex that has it at 89. So, literally out of all the carriers I have, out of all the tiers, the Graf Zeppelin's fighters have the least amount of ammunition. Now, as I mentioned previously, if they're going to have a disadvantage, it needs to be offset by some kind of other advantage, but there is no advantage of the fighters to really speak of. I mean, I mean, I think they said the cruise speed was supposed to be higher, so we've got a cruise speed of 175 knots. Now how does that compare to... Okay, so it's 6 knots faster than the American Tier 8's cruise speed. Let's see, the Enterprise. Okay, so it has a couple knots of speed, so congratulations, it'll start using ammo faster. But then, of course, when you look at the average DPS at 67 compared to the Lexington's 69. Not only that, but look at the hit points. The Lexington fighters have a hit points 2,142. Now there's currently 6 planes per squadron because this captain hasn't got the air supremacy skill yet. Whereas this, their HP is 1,991 and 4 planes per squadron with a maximum of 5. Yeah, this carrier's fighters definitely need to be increased by a lot, because one of the most important role of carriers is to basically clear the skies. And while one could argue that you need to focus on bombers at higher tiers, given the fact that lots of ships at this tier have AA, you got to keep in mind there is always the potential of coming up against the Japanese Shikoku at tier 8, which begins to deal out a lot of planes, and particularly a lot of bombers. I haven't quite unlocked it yet, but I believe the Shikoku is the one that gets the first run of 3 torpedo bombers all at once. Or maybe that's the tier 9. Yeah, that's probably the tier 9 Taiho. Either way, that's still a lot of bombers and things on the field that you got to be able to deal with. But not only that, but at tier 8 you're going to be combating the Enterprise, and many people have claimed the Enterprise to be rather overpowered. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't been using it in PvP and just keeping it as a PvE toy, because it does have a lot of power. I mean, it can pincer with a total of 10 torpedoes, while at the same time having 2 dive bomber squadrons that are capable of dealing massive AP damage, while still having more fighter ammunition. I mean, the Graf Zepplin just cannot compete at all against this. It's just, the Enterprise has literally more bombers in the air at the same time, and torp bombers, so you have the potential for flooding and more accuracy when fired into smoke clouds. It has better fighters, and its dive bombers don't have to take a large amount of time to drop their AP bombs. And you know, that's another downside of the Graf Zeppelin. When you're using the AP bombs, they will fly over the enemy ship and then back around, and then I think they go back again, something like that, either way, and then it's only after they go over it like once or twice, then do they drop their bombs. And any bomber shot down rather at that time, well, obviously then their bombs don't count. That is just really, really annoying, and you know, quite frankly, a little bit unnecessary. I mean, I could maybe see something like that if there was a higher damage trade-off. But let's see, this is the HE bombs, and if we go to this, we have to wait longer to fire our bombs. But oh look, maximum bomb damage is reduced by 2,700. Yeah, so, I mean, I could go on, but I'm sure I've said enough for the moment. And to recap, like I say, the fighters are weak, they don't have enough ammunition, and I think if you're going to bring German fighters into the game, you need to make it so that they're very viable for strafing. I'll be totally fine with, say, a dogfighting penalty or something like that, but they really need to carry a lot of ammo, because when you look at you did give them the extra speed, and that's good. You know, that's what German planes were known for, their speed. They strike and then they try to get out of there. And honestly, if you're going to try to balance the fighters properly, you know, that extra speed could actually be combined with a lot more ammo, could actually require a little bit more thinking when lining up your strafes, because a lot of times right now you know, I've been playing American carriers for so long, so I've gotten used to their speed and lining up their strafes. And if the German fighters were a lot faster, then, and let's say you hypothetically made it so that their speed boost for a strafe was even greater, then what this would mean is players would have to start their strafe from a bit further behind the ship or the enemy planes than they would normally, and this would of course require more skill and timing. And that's basically what I want out of this carrier. I want it to require more player skill and have a higher skill ceiling and then be subsequently rewarded with getting more damage as a result of that. But as of right now, this just seems like, to put it simply, a noob carrier. It doesn't allow for any advanced tactics because, you know, as you saw in that one little PvE, you know, I was trying to do my usual tactics of break and strafe, you know, pulling one squad of fighters that's locked in dogfight back while a nearby one strafes them, but the lack of ammo just really prohibited the use of that tactic. The circular aiming on the HE bombs prohibited the use of even bothering to manual aim, and then with the AP bombs locking you into a bombing pattern, this gives the enemy plenty of time to dodge the shots, and you know, they could have plenty of warning of what's going on. They could potentially turn broadside in that amount of time, and it doesn't matter how much you lined up that shot well when you initially started the bombing run, it's going to be for naught. And some people could say, well, you just need to get better at predicting which way they're going to turn. You know, how are you supposed to know that? You can't accurately kind of predict that. I mean, a lot of times you can see what direction they're turning, but you know, they, as soon as they realize they're being hit by APs, they could just stop or try to start going straight, and it just becomes really impossible to predict. Whereas if you see that a player is starting to make a turn with all the other dive bombers, you know that once your bombers get to a certain area, they're going to fire instantly, and so it becomes significantly easier to predict the trajectory because you can see the direction they're heading, you can know what kind of ship they're using to see how long it's going to take them to make that turn and all that. Whereas you've got an addition, they've got basically like an additional 5 or 10 seconds. I haven't really timed it to kind of dodge that attack, and yeah, it's again definitely not something that I would want to bring into PvP in its current state, because I just don't see it as being competitive, and right now, like I say, it's nothing more than a toy. The fighters need work, the dive bombers need to lose the circle, and the AP bombs need to not have such a time delay upon bombing. And, well, that's pretty much all my thoughts on the carrier itself right now. I want to end this video with saying that to the staff of Wargaming, I'm actually very, very pleased with your prompt response to this whole situation, this fiasco, and the fact that you were offering refunds regardless of how many battles were played. That's pretty awesome. I personally am not going to be requesting a refund, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you develop the ship, because as of right now, it's honestly the best looking carrier I've seen, and I really love combining it with the captain, and I hope that someday I can bring this into PvP and it be fair, you know, not so weak that I can't compete against any other carrier, but at the same time not so overpowered that people are accusing me of paying to win, or just following the flavor of the month and stuff like that, because yeah, I really get annoyed with that. But oh well, that's all I got to say for now. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.